Hey everyone, welcome to Check the Kick podcast. My name is Devin. I am the host of the show. This is brought to you by Sherdog. If you are tuning in for the first time, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have listened to anything I've done before, I appreciate you coming back. In this show, we will be going over fights from the past, what's hot in MMA today, and fights coming up in the future. The show will be broken up into 3 segments. The first one will be titled Out with the Old. The middle segment will be titled What's Hot, and the final segment will be called In with the New. I hope you guys enjoy the show, and thank you so much for tuning in. Let's get started. So for the first segment of the show, we have to talk about UFC 289. I would love to go over some of those fights with you guys. Most importantly, Amanda Nunes versus Irina Aldana and Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush. What a performance by Amanda Nunes. She ends up leaving her 2 belts and her gloves in the octagon and walks away as the double champ. Featherweight is a disputed division, but she is still a double champ because she did earn those belts, and she earned the featherweight belt by knocking out Cyborg, so that's good enough for me. In this fight, Aldana definitely seemed fearful of Amanda and the power that she possesses. It was definitely strange. In the first round, there was a sequence towards the end of the round where Amanda came rushing forward, just kind of crashing the pockets with not much respect for Aldana. And Aldana kind of takes a step and cuts an angle and fires a straight right down the pipe. And it clearly staggered Amanda. And it might have been one of the most impactful punches from both fighters in the whole fight. And I was very surprised to see someone land a shot like that, at the championship level fighting for a belt that wasn't able to build off of it, didn't gain any confidence from it. It's kind of a weird performance. Amanda really had her way with her. Tons of chopping leg kicks, and then that beautiful front kick. It wasn't like a John Jones oblique kick, but she was more aiming for the knee and the calf, upper calf area. But nonetheless, that stabbing kick was great as well from her. Amanda's boxing was on point. Irene usually has the most success in the pocket, countering counters that have been drawn out. She'll pillar, keep a high guard, get into the pocket, deflect a couple shots, and then fire something back. She has her famous left hook, what she used to kind of kill off Ketlin Vieira. But in this fight, Irina just never went for it. Her corner was trying. And that Leon Edwards Usman 2 moment just never happened. They could not light the fire from under her ass. In between rounds where she was just getting flattened, she was still, dapping up Amanda in between rounds, which is really confusing. Another thing I found confusing is she showed that she could kind of take all Amanda's shots. Like, they were impactful. They caused damage. She was clearly bleeding, clearly beat up. I'd imagine today she's got 2 black eyes and a couple swollen lips and God knows what else. But she did show that she could take those shots. And after you fight 2 rounds the way you fought, you might as well just go out on your shield. If you don't think you're going to win the fight and get your win bonus, at least try for the performance bonus. She also has to know that she's probably, based off her age, never going to be in another title fight again. And especially based off this performance, my hopes aren't high for her personally. But either way, that shouldn't take anything away from Amanda. Amanda looked great everywhere. They weren't counting these as takedowns, but they might as well. There were moments between the first couple rounds where she was just snatching up that single leg and just elevating Aldana. And Aldana wanted nothing to do with it. She was extremely panicked everywhere. Just throwing Aldana to the ground whenever she pleased. Definitely very, very tactful performance from Amanda. And Amanda's just a brute in there. She's been going on and kind of brutalizing all of these opponents from the past. I'm not surprised to see her retire But also when you look at the way she fought this fight, like the takedown was there in the first 2 rounds, but Amanda didn't respect her. I think Amanda fought this fight wanting a finish in her final fight. She stated in the post-fight presser, somebody from some media outlet asked her, did you know you were going to retire? At what point did you know? She stated that she knew she was going to retire when she signed on the dotted line. So you can kind of look at Amanda's game plan and see that she probably wanted to try to get her out of there with striking, and then Aldana maybe proved to be a little tougher durability wise than she expected, and then she just kind of took the fight to the ground and also had her way. 50-44 and 50-43 times 2, I believe, are what the scorecards were. I think all 3 judges scored the last round of 10-8, which I agree. Quite frankly, she just kind of beat the shit out of Aldana, and Aldana's going to really have to go back and look at this performance, and maybe the moment was too big for her. Maybe she just wasn't prepared. There was an interviewer that asked her, what are you going to be different? What are you going to do different? How are you different than any of her previous opponents? And she said, I'm Mexican, which that's great. You want to believe in yourself and your heritage, but like Amanda Nunes is the GOAT. You got to bring more than that to the table. Looking at Amanda's illustrious career, this is a good way to go out. I believe Pena was the only former champion that she never finished. And I mean, Pena is shown to be tough as hell. And if you kind of look at the fights, even though Amanda's winning them, I still think she might have been getting towards the end of her career physically as well. Like, that shot that Aldana hurt her with, I don't know if that would have hurt her 3 or 4 years ago. Like, she took those shots from Cyborg and was kind of unfazed. And in this fight, there were moments where when Aldana did go for it, she did have effect and impactful shots that caused Amanda to reset. But it was never enough. I'm going to go to Sherdog.com and I'm going to pull up Amanda Nunes' career. And I'm only going to do this out of respect because I don't want to gloss over anything or possibly miss anything. And gosh, I'm just scrolling through it, and okay, we'll start with GDR. She beat Jermaine Durandamy. That was in 2013. TKO via level. She lost to Kat Zingano. She lost that very next fight, but that's all the way back in 2014. Shayna Baszler, Sarah McMahon, Valentina Shevchenko absolutely destroyed Miesha Tate, crushed her. We all know what she did to Ronda. She beat Shevchenko in the second fight. However you scored it. It's a win on paper. Even having a close fight with Shevchenko shows how good you are. The whole Raquel Pennington fiasco where she was begging to stop the fight. The corner threw her back in there and she went and got finished. Right after that is when she knocked out Cyborg. And then she head kicked Holly Holm. Decisioned Drained Durandamy in the rematch. In that fight, GDR had a lot of success with the striking. However, Amanda still did what she had to do to win that fight, completely out-grappled her. Felicia Spencer, whatever, that was a featherweight defense. Megan Anderson, another one. Her loss to Juliana Pena, she went and got that one back, and then beats Renee Aldana and walks away. What a great career. And as far as women GOATs, however you want to call it, not only in MMA, but she's also probably the greatest women's combat sports athlete of all time. If not, she's definitely in the top 3 or top 5. Like, you got to put her, on the same level as someone like Clarissa Shields or something like that, which is absolutely great company to be in. Valentina Shevchenko is also sitting at that table. But again, thanks to Amanda Nunes. What a great career. There's probably more to talk about with her whole career than this actual fight. So that's kind of why I wanted to lean that way for you guys. And the title's vacant, and we will see what happens with it. I'm kind of curious to see what's going on there. Moving on to the next fight, Charles Oliveira beats Beneil Dariush, and man, Charles Oliveira is just showing to still be that dude. He is he is a mofo. He is that guy that he's still holding records and continuing to break records in the prime of his career. You look at other guys that are, cut from that same cloth, breaking those records. Those are dudes at the end of their career, like Matt Brown. He's 42, I think, 42. Jim Miller, another guy that's getting up there in age, definitely not fighting the guys that Charles Oliveira is fighting, and definitely not in the prime of his career. And he just went out there, and there was a moment where he it almost looked like he drugged Beneil into his guard, and he was being a willing guard player. And I was a little bit iffy in that moment. I was like, man, I don't know if this is the best thing for Charles to be doing. I don't know if he's showing the best fight IQ here, but Charles' small lapse of fight IQ makes him more entertaining. And Beneil had a lot of success. Beneil is a very, very good grappler, high-level BJJ practitioner, really good on top. He's very methodical on top, almost like a Glover Teixeira type, where he's not going to go crazy to chase a submission. He will line up ground and pound, which is what he did to Oliveira. He landed some good ground and pound, had some good control time. Charles Oliveira was looking for sweeps. Then he closed the guard in a couple moments, which again I was a little iffy about, but he started attacking off of his back, and then it seemed like he kind of just got up when he wanted to, which was pretty impressive. And I think there was like a minute 40 or don't quote me on that, but we'll say just over a minute left in the round. And Daniel Cormier says on the broadcast something along the lines of, there's a minute left. Charles has to do something big here if he wants to win back this round. And Paul Felder hilariously goes, that's enough time for Charles. And within seconds after that, he lands that beautiful head kick. The head kick was a big chopping head kick. And it didn't land flush. It was partially blocked, but also like part of the foot looked to maybe like wrapped behind the ear a little bit. And Beneil is not the most durable dude, and that kind of put him on skates right away. Beneil's not also very fast, unfortunately for him. He's just not one of the faster guys in that division. And Charles has just got big power these days. His striking has improved so much. He was able to line up a few right hands in that exchange, and then Beneil started to skirt outside of the cage, and then he kind of caught him with a leaping right hook. That dropped Beneil. Beneil went shooting for a single leg and kind of died on it, but he was already really hurt. Charles Oliveira was able to reverse position, get on top, land a bunch of ground and pound, and just finish him with ground and pound. And Charles did show in that moment, if he would have hurt, say, Justin Gaethje, he would go for the submission, but he knew against someone like Beneil, I don't even want to play that game. Even when I'm on the ground, I'm just going to punch him until he's out. It was awesome. Charles Oliveira is just, God, he's such a dog, such an OG in the UFC. And I put him up there with guys like Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier, who have built a tremendous striking game in their UFC career. And he might be number one. Maybe all three of those guys, they're all, sitting at the same table when it comes to striking improvement in the UFC. Just incredible performance. I do feel a little bit bad for Beneil Dariush. Sorry, drinking water on camera. He was on like an 8-fight win streak, hadn't lost in 6 years or something like that. And for him to put it all out there and just lose the way he did, he's got to go back to the drawing board. And that just may be the story of Beneil Dariush. I don't know if he should maybe go up a division. And I'm kind of just thinking about that now, but this weight cut seems to affect him. His durability seems to kind of be a problem. His speed kind of seems to be a problem. He's got good power, comes from a good camp, has a big left hand. And I think maybe if he had a lesser weight cut and beefed up just a little bit where he could tune it all in, his durability might go up. And then he's not cut into a $155 anymore. He's saving 15 pounds. The jump between lightweight and welterweight is big for guys that are, at that body type. The guys that are 6'1". It's a big, even I think he's 5'9", but still, guys that are even between like 5'9" and 6'1", cutting an extra 15 pounds is huge. But he's probably going to have to fight someone like Arman Tsaukyan or maybe like Fiziev, someone down there, or maybe the UFC tries to get him in a fight with like Guram Kutataladze. As for Charles Oliveira, Dana White said in the post-fight presser right after the event that he wants to book Islam and Charles #2. I'd be cool with that. But if I'm Charles, I would have already called Dana and told him, hey, dude, let's get this fight signed. Call Islam Abu Dhabi. I'll go to his house. Let's do it again. Because if he waits and this season of The Ultimate Fighter ends, Conor McGregor signs a contract to fight Michael Chandler, Islam might just say, hey, I'll wait to fight the winner of this, or I'll wait for the winner of the BMF ordeal. So Charles needs to be campaigning like yesterday. He needs to pick up the phone, call Dana, tell him, let's get these contracts signed. Also over the weekend, with this card, it was a little bit weak, and there was some pretty good fights on this card over the weekend as well. Shout out to Dan Ige, big win over Nate Landwehr. His left hook was firing on all cylinders. That was awesome. Quite frankly, he killed it. He looked great. I was making jokes in the Sherdog Slack chat that he was like a mini Poatan. Even like all the way back on the early prelims, Ursig had a great win over Dvorak. If you haven't caught that fight, you totally should. This guy showed up on 8 days' notice, cut all the way down to $125, and showed up and kind of beat a flyweight staple in Dvorak. That was awesome. Jasmine Jasdavicius beat Miranda Maverick, and she was a big underdog. I think she was like plus 250. Typical women's MMA. Poor Chris Curtis, man, got headbutt, eye blown up, couldn't see. They stopped that fight. Ayman Zahabi, huge knockout win. All of the Canadians won. It was Mike Malott absolutely crushed club and subbed Adam Fugit. That was really awesome too. The guardrails broke. The crowd was treating Mike Malott like he was a beetle. Just an all-around good card. Fight of the night was Marc-Andre Barriault versus Eric Anders. That was a damn good fight, a really good scrap. However you guys can find these fights online, if you haven't seen them, go back and find them. You'll figure out a way, if you know what I mean. But yeah, wrapping up 289, it was, kind of a light card for a pay-per-view. We're going to be through a slog of MMA fights coming up. So keep your eye out. The UFC does have some pretty good stuff coming up in the future. And outside of that, Bellator things as well. Also on the weekend, Teofimo Lopez beat Josh Taylor in a super impressive fashion. It was the Teofimo of old. He was working his angles really well, combination punching really well, even really staggered and wobbled Taylor in the fourth round. Clean performance. Scorecards read like 113 to 115 on two of the scorecards. That's just like typical boxing stuff where, I mean, if you go back and watch that fight and you were to score it Pride style, just the overall fight, Teofimo just kind of worked him, man. Even his leaping hooks, like an old school Roy Jones Jr. style, just super impressive. He did the thing. Now he's a champ at 140 pounds. And all week he's just such a guy that, has such a strange and what seems troubled personal life with his dad, trainers, ex-wife. He's like going through a divorce. He's been saying a bunch of crazy stuff, how he wanted to like kill a man in a boxing ring, or he's not worried about dying in the boxing ring, stuff along those lines. That always, guys start talking like that and you get iffy. But man, shit, he really showed up. He looked great. Go back and watch that fight if you haven't. Really good fight on the weekend. Stoked to see Teofimo back in impressive fashion. I mean, he looked like he did against Lomachenko. That quality, just top tier shit. Great stuff. Starting off the second segment of the show called What's Hot, we're going to discuss some hot topics currently in MMA. I definitely want to start with the recent PFL stuff. they've definitely been in the news a lot lately as far as MMA goes and all combat sports. It all started with the Francis Ngannou debacle and how he is going to be a representative for PFL Africa, which is pretty awesome. Um, and then all of the contractual stuff and all of the back and forth tweets between John Jones, Dana, and Francis, just the whole pissing match. I don't want to talk about it too much, but that is, part of the reason why they've been in the news. And then all of a sudden, speaking of pissing, all of their fighters are pissing hot. Their light heavyweight division is kind of being crushed. Their last season's champ, Rob Wilkinson, just pissed hot. And his opponent, Thiago Santos, pissed hot. Pretty sure Rob Wilkinson even made a tweet about how he defeated an opponent that tested for PEDs, and then he came around and did the same. You look at Rob Wilkinson's career and his recent run, he moved up to 205 and then just kind of went on a pretty violent assault with a bunch of finishes through PFL to win the $1 million. His fight with Amari Akhmedov, he brutalized him. And one could think, based off of the recent surge of success and his performances to get that $1 million, might have been on PEDs the whole time. I personally don't care about PEDs, but if it's a rule, you need to follow them. That's kind of how I feel about it. When an organization sets a rule and you sign a contract and you agree to follow those rules and you don't, that's a breach of contract. And quite frankly, I mean, are they going to make him give back the $1 million? No, but maybe if they can prove he cheated the whole way through, he stole $1 million. Kind of crazy stuff. And a bunch of other fighters have, tested hot. And this goes also through their previous runs where you look at guys like Dinga Pineda that's currently in the UFC. He went on a killer run in the PFL, then tested hot for PEDs. So it just seems to be a problem that they're having. Another crazy thing that happened in PFL was their number one seed of their featherweight division, a guy that they were really getting behind, got absolutely obliterated in the beginning of the season, right? Pinedo hit him with a knee right in the clinch, and it's the first time in over 30 fights he's ever been dropped or hurt, first time he's ever been finished. And the PFL matchmaking and the way that they put those fights together at such a torrid pace, I personally don't know if the highest level MMA guys can do that. I mean, it's almost like they're taking all their toys and bashing them into each other, where Brendan Loughnane had a pretty crazy season last year, and now he's just got to get back in there and do it all over again. And the fights are so close together. MMA at the highest level, guys that reach 25 plus fights, I just don't know. I don't know if those types of guys are, as far as accrued damage, I don't know if those guys and girls can fight at just so many fights in a row. It's got to be really tough on their body physically. I know Brendan Loughnane has said in previous interviews that he's been nursing injuries through the season. All fighters have injuries, but I mean, just whipping those fights through at such a torrid pace, it's just got to take years off your life and, kind of degrade your performances. If you're fighting, every 3 months over and over again, your body's just going to get beat up and you're not going to be fighting at 100%, especially at the champ level. I almost think that the champion should not have to fight in the next season and should just defend his belt against whoever wins their Grand Prix. I think their Grand Prix should maybe get them a title shot, and maybe they can award the champions enough money so they don't have to fight but once or twice a year. I think that'd be better. And then shout out to Marlon Moraes on that past card. He lost via knockout and he finally hung it up. So many impressive wins, crushed the current UFC champion. But man, what a skid the poor guy went on. So many fights in a row lost, so many vicious knockouts. And, the last of them happened under the PFL banner where they were in pretty close succession. Again, I personally don't like to see dudes that lose that way fighting again so quickly. The way that he was getting knocked out, like there should be way more than 6-8 months in between fights like that when you're getting hurt that badly. But Marlon Moraes, shout out to him. He hung it up. He retired, stated he seemed to have all his wherewithal, which is great. He seemed mentally all there. He said, I've got a beautiful wife at home and I'm kind of done. He basically said he was happy to hang him up under the organization that he started all in, PFL, formerly known as World Series of Fighting. He was their inaugural bantamweight champion. And Marlon Moraes, if you look back at his record, he's got so many good wins. Even a win over Jose Aldo, incredible fight with Henry Cejudo for the vacant bantamweight belt when Henry beat him. Was kind of schooling Henry until Henry came back and took it out of the fire and came back for a win. And that might have been like the breaking point of Marlon. But either way, great career. Typically, we won't talk about retirements on this show, but typically we don't have two MMA notables retire off a weekend. But yeah, still, big shout out to all those guys that are retiring. Cool stuff. The next topic I want to move on to is just the state of women's MMA and the UFC and kind of what's been going on, what Juliana Pena has been doing in the media the past day and a half or so after the retirement of Amanda Nunes, and where I kind of think the UFC should go with the bantamweight division and featherweight division. If you're a women's featherweight in the UFC, you're probably worried about your job right now, and I wouldn't blame you. I don't know if the UFC should keep all of them around. Is Zara Farron really like the highest quality of MMA that they can put on for the public? Automatically, the UFC should probably get rid of women's featherweight. And there are plenty of other organizations that will pay them similar amounts to fight. Currently, there is a tournament Grand Prix style season happening in PFL for women's featherweight. And then there is also Bellator that's got that division open as well. They can go to Invicta. There's tons of stuff for them to do. And a lot of those girls, no offense, are regional level fighters. None of them are extremely talented where, the UFC should really, really hang on to them, in my opinion. And then I think the UFC could take that money and reallocate it to other things. There's just other divisions that are exciting divisions that, maybe could use some more contenders. Just, throw some fuel on the fire. Like, look at middleweight. Middleweight could use more dudes. Plenty of guys coming up, surging through there. You got guys like Ikram Alaskirov, Hamzat Chimaev lingering around. Bo Nickel coming up. But still, I think divisions like middleweight could use a couple more fighters. Heavyweight could use some people. Every division could use more fighters, quite frankly. Men's flyweight, I'd love to see them sign some more men's flyweights. That'd be great. So maybe they can, reallocate those funds if they, dismantle the division. Go to UFC.com right now. I haven't checked as of today, but before Amanda Nunes retired, there was Amanda Nunes and no other fighters in the division ranked at all. And now, guys, I think we just got to go and see. Let's take a look. UFC. And I'm not going to the Sherdog rankings. I'm going to go to the UFC rankings because it's their division. Okay. Let's see. They currently have Amanda still ranked the number one women's pound for pound, and there is still featherweight. However, if you hit the drop down, you can't see it. No one's there. So you can't be the king if you don't have a kingdom, or you can't be the queen if you don't have a kingdom. And if there's no queen and no kingdom, then they probably got to get rid of that division. Bantamweight's women's bantamweight's kind of a slog too. If they're going to keep that division around, maybe they can reallocate the monies from 145 to 135. Juliana Pena's definitely had a lot to say. a lot of it pretty insufferable, saying things along the lines of how she believes she's the greatest women's fighter ever, and she's not a fighter, she's a warrior, and Amanda's running from her. Um, does Pena have a leg to stand on? She actually does, because she finished Amanda, and kind of made Amanda quit. And Amanda went back and decisively beat her in a 5-round fight. However, one of them has a finish over the other, and that's pretty big. No one in a while had finished Nunes like that. So that, and she's been having a lot to say. She's been saying things like, "I'm fighting for the belt." She was on Ariel's show, holding up really funny pictures. Quite frankly, they reminded of like an old MapQuest printout my dad would go and print in black and white. But she was on Ariel's show showing pictures of Amanda all lumped up, and they were screenshots that were uncropped. It was just so bad. But I've never really heard someone call for a fight, but not call for a fighter to face. So she's not saying, put me in against Jermaine Durandamy, or put me in against Raquel Pennington for the vacant belt. She's just kind of saying, she's more of just talking shit to Amanda. And I get it. It's a good way to get your name out there. I totally understand what she's doing. Totally get it. But if you're going to talk all that shit, like, call someone out. Have a fight ready. Have someone right off the top. I think her and Raquel Pennington is a match that makes sense, but I don't think it's a very fun fight. If you look at Juliana Pena, like, win, lose, or draw, at least her fights are kind of interesting to watch, and they're kind of entertaining. Like, her first fight with Amanda was very entertaining. Was it the highest level of MMA? No, but was it entertaining? Yes. Even her second fight with Amanda, super entertaining. When Valentina triangled her, super entertaining. When GDR choked her out, that was also entertaining. So she has entertaining fights. I think that they should put her against Shevchenko in a rematch. I would personally rather see Shevchenko fight for that belt over Pennington. It's the UFC. It's women's bantamweight. It's a really shallow division. It's a division that doesn't have a ton of fights, and it's a kind of boring division. And I think the UFC could, get the most juice out of just shooting Shevchenko into that fight. If I were Shevchenko, I mean, she kind of pretty easily beat Pena, and I would say that she'd probably beat Pena again. And I think Pena is probably an easier fight than Grasso, especially after what we saw. Was Valentina having tons of success and probably winning the Grasso fight? Yes. But Juliana doesn't have the same power or the same boxing as Grasso, and maybe equally slick on the ground. That's kind of what Pena has been known for, having a semi-slick, semi-good grappling wrestling game. But UFC will probably try to throw Holly Holm in there. They'll probably do like Holly Holm versus Pena. And even though Raquel showed up as a short notice replacement, I'll be really surprised to see if the UFC puts Raquel Pennington in the title fight, quite frankly. I just don't think her fight style is what everybody wants to watch. And the matchmakers aren't dumb. Like, they know what's going to make a good fight. And what you deserve sometimes doesn't always matter for the UFC. So I hope that's what they do. Erin Blanchfield also threw her name in the hat. She said, shit, I'll move up and I'll fight Juliana Pena for the belt. I'd be okay with that. That is extremely undeserving, though, and I don't think that would happen. But I mean, still more interesting than Raquel Pennington or Holly Holm for me, just because, gosh, just beating a dead horse, especially with Holly Holm, unfortunately. All right, guys, and on to the final segment of the show. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Third segment of the show is called In with the New. In this segment, I will go over fights on the upcoming weekend, maybe a couple betting lines and stuff I think you should look out for that I think are going to be fun fights. Um, Main event, kicking it off, main event from this coming weekend, we got Marvin Vettori versus Jared Cannonier. Um, Pulled these odds yesterday. They were at a pick 'em yesterday, and they're probably hovering around somewhere like that right now. Matchup where both guys are definitely staples of the division. Everybody knows who they. Anyone that watches MMA knows who Marvin Vettori and Jared Cannonier are. Both of them have challenged for the title. Vettori has fought the current champion twice, won in a non-title bout. Their first fight, which is much closer than their second fight. Israel kind of tooled on him, but at the same time never got off tons of effective offense. And then Jared Cannonier in his fight with Israel had a semi-close fight that Israel clearly won, but Jared got a couple rounds off him in there. And they're both also coming off wins, yes. Jared Cannonier coming off of a highly contested win. Go to MMA Decision, see where it's at. I bet you it's split like 50-50 with Sean Strickland. I personally scored that fight for Sean Strickland. And then Marvin Vettori is coming off of a fight kind of similar to this one against Roman Dolidze, where I scored the fight for Marvin Vettori, but MMA Decisions, I bet it's split 50-50, 60-40, where half of us thought Dolidze won, half of us thought Marvin Vettori won. Both guys coming off impressive wins, beating other guys that are trying to come up and contend for that title and earn their title spot. Marvin Vettori beating Dolidze and Jared Cannonier beating Sean Strickland. Both guys definitely have things that they can do to have success over each other. I think keys to victory for someone like Jared Cannonier would be to really, really try to chop the leg. He's got big power with his kicks, big leg kicks. He stopped Anderson Silva with leg kicks, and it was just due to pain. Jared Cannonier is a huge dude. Looks like he's chiseled from stone, come all the way down from heavyweight with a pit stop at 205 as well. He's huge for the division, long arms, big power. Big power with the boxing as well, big power with his kicks. Everything he does is impactful and intentional. A little bit iffy on the durability for me. He kind of gets buzzed or clipped in just about every fight, especially down at middleweight. And, maybe it's the weight cut. I don't know. He did also look good against Derek Brunson. He showed he turned a new leaf to where, he was losing that fight until he was able to turn things around and hurt him with ground and pound. And, maybe it was Brunson blowing it, but also maybe Cannonier has made those rightful improvements. And he has had a long road, just like Marvin Vettori, to get into the spot where he is in main events, fighting for titles. He's 39 years old. He started MMA. He started in Alaska. He started MMA kind of later in life after, service in the military. And Marvin has been doing this forever. Marvin's been doing this since he was a kid. Back to Jared's game and what I think he's good at. I think to have success over someone like Marvin Vettori, who's clearly like one of the most durable dudes in MMA, point blank period, all divisions, everything, all organizations. Marvin Vettori's durable as shit. That doesn't mean you still can't land shots on him. He's not the fastest guy. He doesn't have the best defense. However, in his last fight against Roman Dolidze, he showed to have a really good back foot boxing game. I want to come back to that. But I think Jared needs to land a lot of leg kicks, really, really try to chop the legs up, really, really try to hinder his movement. Whitaker had a little bit of success doing that against Vettori. And that was one fight where Vettori could never get anything going. Jared Cannonier might have had more success against Whitaker than Vettori did. Both of them cleanly lost that fight. Also, if Jared Cannonier can really get on the front foot and not respect Vettori's power, I think he can land power shots on Vettori. Will he buzz him? Will he hurt him? I mean, Jared does crack, but I'd be surprised if he did hurt Jared. Or sorry, if he did hurt Vettori. And for Vettori, I think the way he wins this game is to get on the front foot. I think the winner of this fight is really going to be impacted by who gets on the front foot first. If Vettori gets on the back foot and allows someone that throws as many kicks and has as much power with his hands, he's going to give Jared too many opportunities. I think Roman Dolidze and Jared Cannonier are similar dudes body type wise. I actually think Dolidze is bigger. They both have big power. However, Dolidze doesn't have the same kicking game, and I don't think his striking game with his hands is just as tight and nip tuck as Cannonier. Can Vettori take the back foot in moments and counterpunch and have success? Yes, but he would need to reinitiate after he has that success taking the back foot. He can't do what he did against Dolidze and just skirt the outside and have his back foot touching the cage the whole time and counterpunch, roll of shots. That's great. And that's a big improvement that he showed, but I don't think he can do that to Cannonier. Going back to Vettori, again, get on the front foot. I think what he needs to do is just really hang tough and make exchanges in the pocket go longer than Jared wants to. Jared wants to land a couple power shots and get out of there. And quite frankly, most dudes he lands power shots on get really hurt. Look what he did to Jack Hermanson. Marvin Vettori dropped and hurt Hermanson, and then Hermanson came back and they went to war. Jared got him out of there right away, immediately. The shot he landed on him crushed him. But again, with Jared's durability, him being 39 years old, I definitely think Vettori has the better gas tank. I think Vettori can get on the front foot. I look a lot back at Paulo Costa, the fight he had with Paulo Costa, where Costa came in way overweight. They fought up at 205. Vettori looked like a 185er that just didn't cut weight, and Paulo Costa looked giant. And Costa hit him with so many body shots, so many shots to the head, and Vettori was just unfazed. The kicking game is a little different. Costa relies a lot more on body kicks. Excuse me. A lot more on body kicks, where Jared's more of a leg kick guy. But I think he still needs to take that same forward pressure, take the kick away, and just make exchanges in the pocket go longer. Vettori doesn't have tons of power. However, a 39-year-old guy, you force him to exchange over and over again. You put him on the back foot. He did hurt Hermanson. He has hurt other people in fights too. He could definitely buzz Cannonier. And I think that's just what he's going to do here. One thing that worries me about it, if you worries me if I'm picking Vettori, or worries, would worry a Vettori fan, is what Cannonier showed to do against Izzy against the cage. Not many dudes have been able to get underhooks and clinch Israel and push him up against the cage. Usually once Izzy, his back touches that cage, he's out of there. Not many dudes at middleweight have been able to just push him against the cage and hold him there physically. Jared is definitely physically strong. But I think Vettori has enough schooled game. He's such a nuts and bolts guy. His game is put together so well, where I think he can, go in there and just fight a well-schooled game and really put the pressure on Jared Cannonier. I want to see Vettori fight in a way like Fluffy Hernandez, or fight in a way like Marc-Andre Barriault, where they're just on the pressure. He's going to get on him and stay on him. And I think if he takes that, takes a game plan like that and really pushes it on Cannonier, I think he'll have success. I'm going to pick Vettori in this fight as well, but it's like a dead even fight. So you just don't know. You just don't know in a fight like this. Either one of these guys, one little adjustment or one little mistake, and it's, it's a loss for either one of them. Great fight though. Absolutely great. I don't know what it means for them. If I'm picking Vettori to win the fight, I don't think he fights for a title. I think Israel Adesanya is probably the biggest Dricus du Plessis fan right now. He's probably praying that he beats Whitaker. But if someone like Ikram Aliskerov and actually fights Paulo Costa, like if Paulo Costa actually fights and Ikram Aliskerov beats Paulo Costa, the UFC is trying to make that fight happen, like way before Vettori gets a third fight with Izzy. If Cannonier wins, maybe he can get a rematch. He might be able to weasel his way into it. But again, I still think Izzy is really looking at that Whitaker du Plessis fight. And if Whitaker wins, he's probably going to try to look for something else. And And if Duplessis wins, we already know Izzy's going to be all over that. He wants that fight. And Izzy's not stupid. You fight the easiest fight for the most amount of money. Plain and simple. There's a reason why he's also lately been saying that he doesn't see himself fighting Alex Pereira again. I don't blame him. I wouldn't fight Alex Pereira again. He's scary as hell. Moving on to another fight that I would like to talk about is Arman Tsarukyan versus Joaquim Silva. And man, poor Arman just can't get a fight against anyone that matters. Joaquim Silva, decent fighter, but Arman Tsarukyan is ranked number 8 in the division per UFC rankings. And Joaquim Silva is probably not in the top 25 of the world rankings, probably not in the top 30. He's got 2 knockout wins, but sandwiched in between that in his last 4 fights are 2 knockout losses. Knockout of Jared Gordon, that was back in 2018. And then he came back in his last fight out and knocked out Jesse Ronson. But between that, he got knocked out by Nasrat Haqparast. Okay, that's fine. Nothing wrong with losing a fight to Nasrat Haqparast. He's a good fighter. He's got good power. Everyone knows that about him at this point. But losing to Ricky Glenn, that's not a good look, especially in the first round, just getting murdered like that. And Joaquim Silva's Neto BJJ. The dude hasn't won a fight via submission since 2014, and that was under the RDC MMA Retro de Campeones 1, February 14th, 2014. Has not won a fight by submission since. Kind of like Vitor screaming jiu-jitsu after he wins via vicious knockout. And Joaquim Silva is huge. Poor Arman Tsarukyan keeps getting matched with these giant dudes. Joel Alvarez, guys like that. Joaquim Silva's got big power. He's dangerous on the feet, but he's only dangerous for 6 minutes. And then he's tired. Nasrat Haqparast is a guy that, if Nasrat is clubbing and getting you out of there, I just don't see why Arman Tsarukyan can't do the same. Even if Arman didn't rely on his best skill set, which is his grappling, his striking is really, really good, really, really fast. He's great in the pocket, super defensively sound, super quick. He's young too, and he's been making huge improvements in between fights. Look what he did to Giagos. I could see him totally doing something like that. I could also totally see him doing something like what he did to Joel Alvarez. And that's kind of what I think is going to happen. Do I think he can just go out there and outstrike Joaquim Silva? Yes. But why? Why take the risk? Take your money, take your win bonus, maybe get a performance bonus. I think he'll probably try to strike with him for the first 2.5 minutes of the first round, take him down, make him tired. Second round starts, gets a takedown within the first minute, takes him down and just elbows his head off. Probably looked like he attacked him with a steak knife. Probably bloody. Look at Joel Alvarez's face after that. And the second Joel Alvarez started bleeding and Arman really saw that he opened him up, he just went to town. Arman, he's such a good controlling grappler, but he's also such a good defensive grappler. He's such a good scrambler. He's got submissions. He can just really do everything. He's got such a good game. His only downfall is that he's just not a big dude for the division, but he's in his mid-20s. I think he's 26, and he's built similar to Alexander Volkanovski. And, talking about Alexander, they both have a former opponent in Islam Makhachev, and those two dudes are the only dudes that have any success as of late against Islam. And Arman debuted on short notice against Islam and gave him his hardest fight besides his knockout loss until he ran into Volkanovski. And arguably, if you look at scorecards and you score a fight, probably a cleaner win over Volk than Arman, some may say. Betting odds on this fight, Arman Tsarukyan he's minus 1,100, 11-1 favorite. Joaquim Silva, you can get him back at plus 750. There's no value in it, maybe top off your parlay, but there's not a ton of value in something like that. But man, anytime Arman Tsarukyan fights, you have to tune in to watch. He's one of my favorite fighters on the roster. He's incredible. He's so well put together. Everything he does is great. He has the speed of Rafael Fiziev. He has the scrambling of like a flyweight. His scrambling reminds me of like Brandon Moreno, that level, high level. Great grappling. Not on Islam's level, but might be number 2. Yes, he had close fights with Gamrot, stuff like that. But man, he's young. He's improving. He's an absolute freaking killer. Definitely got to keep an eye out on that fight. There's a couple other good fights on that card. We'll go take a look at it real quick. Armen Petrosian, Christian Leroy Duncan. That's probably a banger. You should go watch that one. Totally, you guys got to tune into that. Manuel Torres versus Nicolas Mata. That should be just 2 dudes slugging it out in the pocket. 2 huge dudes. Modestas Pekauskas is back. Zalga Zumagulov is trying to finally get a win in the UFC. Jimmy Flick's trying to get a win after a retirement. There are 2 men's flyweight fights in a row, a men's bantamweight fight, and then another men's flyweight fight. This card should be pretty good. A lot of guys that might not be too popular, too famous, but there's so many bantamweights. I think that the highest weight class on this is middleweight, and that's that Christian Leroy Duncan versus Armen Petrosian fight. That fight should actually be good. I think it's a pretty good all-around card, especially coming off of like a kind of lower level pay-per-view. And cards like this are the ones that always show out. Last thing I want to touch on is Bellator. Bellator's got a big weekend coming up on Friday night. Main event, Vadim Nemkov versus Yoel Romero. That's going to be big. View-wise, this might outdo the UFC. Vadim Nemkov, protege of Fedor Emelianenko. Everyone knows who Yoel Romero is. This fight should be pretty interesting. I didn't think too highly of Vadim Nemkov. I know he's great, but that first Corey Anderson fight, I was like, man, Corey Anderson kind of exposed this dude. But second fight, he just went out there and just outclassed Corey Anderson everywhere, on the feet and the grappling. No deficiencies there. Vadim Nemkov has a very well put together game. And Yoel Romero is like 43 years old. He's a freak of nature. He's moved up to 205. The only time he's ever pissed hot was when he had a tainted supplement and then he won a lawsuit over it. If you look at that guy and you're like, you want to talk about PFL and steroids and all that crap, like Yoel Romero is a candidate for that. I don't know what he's made of. You hear all the stories about the doctors and Joe Rogan, blah, 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 but Yoel is still an explosive athlete, huge power. He's going to be the underdog coming into this. You know what? Let me grab the odds for you guys real quick. Okay, yeah, Nemkov is a big favorite. He's minus 330. Romero's plus 270. Romero is probably an underdog against every champion around his weight class, so for whatever organization, just based off his age and just his like lapses of fight IQ. But the dude is such an explosive athlete, and when he wins fights, it's incredible. Go look at his fights with Robert Whittaker. He lost both those fights, but just crazy fights. The way he freaking crushed Luke Rockhold, absolutely killed him. His fight with Paulo Costa, the jump knee he landed on Chris Weidman, literally looked like he hit him in the head with a hatchet. The guy's just capable of so much just pure athleticism. He can scramble his ass off. He can kind of do almost everything. There was a fight he had recently where he, against Phil Davis, it was scheduled for 3 rounds, and the 3rd round ends, and he's like, "What? I thought there was 2 more rounds." And it's just like, Yoel, bro, come on, man. But you got to tune into that one. That's gonna be a banger. Yoel's got to know where he's at this point. Bellator's backed up the Brinks truck for him. They put so much promotion behind him. Bellator wants Yoel to win this fight, it seems. You go to Bellator's Instagram page right now. I bet you within the last hour or two, there's a post from Yoel Romero. And I even saw they did a shoot with Yoel, and he was holding a Bellator belt and like biting it like a dog. Definitely go tune into that one. Another fight that you guys got to watch this weekend on Friday night is Sergio Pettis against Pitbull. Pitbull moving down to 135 to challenge Sergio Pettis. Pitbull's a dude that sparked Michael Chandler for the 155-pound belt. and lost against AJ McKee and came back and won his belt back. Pitbull's probably the best fighter outside of the UFC, and he's probably always been the best fighter out of the UFC outside of Usman or Magomedov. Going down to 135 at this stage of his career is a big red flag for me. But if you look at Sergio Pettis, he really struggled with a guy that's a flyweight now in Horiguchi and has kind of always been a flyweight in Horiguchi. Sergio Pettis is an MMA OG, can scramble his ass off. He can strike. That spinning back fist was timed so beautiful, the way he just flatlined Horiguchi to win the belt. But he's been out for a while. Pitbull's had fights in between, multiple fights in between the time that Pettis has been out. You'd assume, coming from a camp that he comes from, he trains with Henry Cejudo and he has his Pitbull Brothers gym. You'd assume that he has had probably several test cuts to 135, but I'm curious to see how his durability holds up. I'd almost rather see him in a fight with someone like Patchy Mix, who's like a big 35er, and not like Sergio, who's come up from flyweight. And he's probably punching air, because Bellator has announced a flyweight division now, where he's like, shit, man, that could have been me. I beat your guy that you're now putting down to flyweight. I beat that guy. That's how I got my belt. Either way, that's a fight you gotta look out for. If Pitbull is able to capture a third belt in a third division, he'd be the first person in the history of MMA that I can think of to do something like that in one of the top organizations. Is it at the UFC level? No. But doing something like that is going to open the door for people at the UFC level, and it's going to make those guys want to do that. So just Pitbull walking in there and fighting at 135, he is really setting the bar. Something that maybe Frankie Edgar could have looked at doing a while back. But still an incredible feat. And incredible feat just to fight at 135 after being a champion in two divisions, and such a staple of Bellator. And if he does claim the belt, we got to talk about him, and we got to start talking about him. Anyway, that's the end of the show, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Devin. Again, this is Check the Kick. You can find it on Sherdog, find it everywhere else, find it on YouTube. Please like it. Please comment if there's something that you suggest or something that you want to hear. If you have a question about anything, I'll respond. The other guys that run it will typically respond too. Until then, thank you so much. You can find me on social media right there. Dev Goes Fishing. Hope you guys have a wonderful day and enjoy the fights.